Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for joining us. Smash that like, smash that subscribe, and come and join us in the chat. This is a mailbag episode, and we love to be able to also take questions and continue the conversation with you, the live audience. So this is a great show to do it. We have some good questions that have come from the big old bag of mail. One way to get at us is to leave a 5-star review. In that review, put your question. We will flag it and add it to a future episode. Be looking at some quarterback competition predictions. We have, in the long esteemed history of week 0 games, we're going to highlight some of the best ones that we've seen.
Gee, I wonder who submitted that question. Maybe somebody on the show.
I don't know. Maybe. So listen, that we can get to it later, but there's week 0 games and there's also week 0 moments, because I've got a photo of David Shaw with a koala bear in Australia that just rings out in my mind. I forgot about every single time that I think about week 0 when Stanford and Rice went to go play in Australia. It's not just Ireland that we've been sending college football teams here in the last decade or so. So we will get to all of that and more. And of course, your live viewer questions. Okay. Let's go ahead and kick this thing off. I liked this one here because it came from somebody who is a bit younger than all of us. The username is Sarton Bimmons, and there's been a lot of Barton love that's been coming out. I've enjoyed that. All right, Sarton Bimmons asks, I was 11 for the Cam Newton year at Auburn, so I didn't understand how special of a season he had at the time. If Cam Newton played last season, 2021, what is the worst team that he could drag to a national championship?
I was also 11 that year.
No, we were working at CBS. The 2010 season was our first one with the eye.
Don't you remember? I was Tom Fornelli, the child reporter. He's only 11.
All right, so
no, it couldn't have been. You don't have a parent in media, do you?
No, I don't.
So what are we thinking? Where do you draw? Because the Cam Newton famously, I think it was the only NFL draft pick on the offensive side. Nick Fairley was a stud at defensive tackle on the defensive side. But you look at the rest of that Auburn starting line, the rest of the depth chart, it was not your typical SEC West national championship contender, especially from the long run of SEC championships, of which that was a part. So what kind of squad could Cam Newton, if he had played in 2021 in his 2010 form, what squad could he have dragged to a national championship?
I don't want this to come off as Cam Newton slander, because that season was the most incredible season I've ever seen from a college football player. And it's still the most incredible season I've ever seen from a college football player, in that he single-handedly did carry Auburn to a lot of wins and got them to a national championship, and they won the national title. But I think the worst team last year that Cam Newton could have led to a national title was Michigan. I don't think you're getting past any of the teams that made the college football playoff last year, because the difference is that while Cam was on an Auburn team that, like you just said, Chip, there were no other NFL draft picks on it. But so much has changed in the decade since, as far as the elite of the elite pulling away from everybody else when it comes to recruiting and kind of just hoarding all the 4- and 5-star talent, that although the SEC was really good that year, and it had been good for a while, although I'm saying it was the best conference in football, it wasn't actually, if you go back and look at the standings, it wasn't a particularly good year for the SEC, particularly in the East. South Carolina, who won the division and faced Auburn in the SEC championship game, 9-5. But the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world are so much better than everybody else at this point. So if you look at quarterback, maybe he's able to, win a national title with the Wolverines. At Cincinnati, maybe you're able to win your semifinal game, but I don't think you're beating both Alabama and Georgia with Cam Newton at Cincinnati. So I look at that and I just think that as good as he is, and look at the Oregon team that he faced in the title game. If that Oregon team, you put them in the playoff right now, last year, is that Oregon team coming within 20 or 30 of whoever it played in the semifinal, whether it was Georgia or Alabama? Because if you look at Auburn's schedule in 2010, they weren't really blowing the doors off of anybody. Like, they beat South Carolina by 8 in the regular season. They beat Kentucky by 3. They had an 18-point or 22-point win over a good Arkansas team. They beat LSU by 7. They blew out a bad Ole Miss team. They blew out Chattanooga. Georgia was pretty mediocre that year. They beat them by 18, but they beat Alabama by 1, and then they only beat Oregon by 3. There were a lot of one-score games. It's not like the Tigers were just destroying opponents. The reason Cam was so effective was because they were in a ton of close games, and in those games, he was the difference maker. I don't think there are nearly as many close games as they would have been then as far as those teams are concerned. So I think that if he's quarterbacking Michigan last year, the Wolverines are winning the Big Ten. They're getting to the playoff, and maybe they're winning a national title. But even then, I don't think they'd be favored over Alabama or Georgia.
I think you bring up really good points. I initially started this looking at teams that were like, can he drag programs up from 7-5 to a national championship? I had a couple suspects, but then I was like, there's no way. There's no way one player makes that much of a difference. But I was interested at Oregon. Like, I think Oregon was a team last year that maybe you put Cam Newton on it, because then I was like, all right, were there any rosters that felt like they were a quarterback away, or the quarterback play was pretty rough and then they were able to overcome it? Say maybe the Florida Gators too from last year. Like, just that was kind of my mindset. But I agree with you where you can't just take a team that's around 500 or even 8-4 and just assume that Cam Newton is going to elevate them 4 or 5 win differential. But I think he could be the difference in some really good teams being national championship contenders. But I think you have to have pieces around it too. And I think you're right. I mean, that's why I think we need this. That's why there's a problem right now with these 3 teams that have such a separation, because it doesn't matter. You need, the blue chip ratio, which, but you need an entire team to compete with everything these programs have.
Yeah, a couple commenters have brought up Clemson, which I think is a good candidate, because Clemson could probably get to the playoff if they have Cam Newton instead of DJU last year, because you combine that with their defense. But is that Clemson team, even with Cam, once it gets to the playoff, are they winning 2 games? I don't know.
Do they have a healthier offensive line than Alabama did?
So that's the thing. What changes? Like, does Cam suddenly heal their offensive line? Does he make the receivers more, threatening because he could
Clemson with DJU played a 10-3 game against the eventual national champions.
Mm-hmm.
I think
they lost.
I think Clemson with Cam Newton is a good option, but I think I can go further down. I started with the final AP top 25, and I was just going down. I said Clemson, okay, 14, but I think that Cam Newton would take a team that was even further down. I think Cam Newton on Arkansas could have turned the Razorbacks into a national championship contender. I look at I look at the Auburn team, and like, you do a good job of providing some context for the 2010 season, and it is very tough to go 10 years later with everything that has changed about the game of football and everything that has changed about sort of recruiting and the talent dispersion all across the country. But I think that Arkansas is one of your candidates there. Is Iowa, this is then again, I'm looking at the AP top 25. Is Iowa a team that Cam Newton last year, and factor in all of the, turnovers and points off turnovers, like
Iowa with Cam Newton is Cincinnati.
No, Cam Newton versus Desmond Ridder. That's not a fair comparison.
No, that's an upgrade. But how many draft picks did Cincinnati have last year? 9.
Yeah, they were.
It's not like they were. It's not like they weren't talented. So I mean, they upgraded quarterback. So there's Iowa with Cam Newton last year is the equivalent of Cincinnati. They get to the playoff. I don't think they're winning it.
Oregon.
That was my suggestion.
Yeah,
possible, but does
Mario slow down?
Does Mario Georgia have Cam handing off 30 times a game?
How about if it is Cam Newton and not Graham Mertz? Does Wisconsin get off to a slow start, and does Wisconsin find itself in a position to be able to? Because that's what I've got to go for here. Is when I'm looking for the comparisons, I'm looking for the defense that's really, really good, but maybe not loaded up with 5 stars, and Wisconsin also fits that bill.
I think it's a similar situation to Iowa where you get to the playoff, or you might, because that's the thing. Wisconsin would definitely have won the West and they would have reached the Big Ten championship, but there's no guarantee that they beat Michigan if they're there. But when you get to the playoff at that point, like your advantage at quarterback that you have in the Big Ten with Cam Newton is gone because you're going up against Bryce Young. So Alabama has a good quarterback too. Georgia's got a defense that's better than yours. So everything that you have the advantage of in the Big Ten in this scenario, you no longer have once you get to the playoff. Because again, the difference these days is Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and now we're seeing Texas A&M kind of catch up. Like you mentioned the blue chip ratio. It's always been you need to be at least 50% to win a national title, or at least no team that's won a national title has had a lower ratio than 50%. But the difference is we're seeing more teams now with like a blue chip ratio in the upper 80s and the lower 90s. That wasn't always the case. Like it used to be like upper 60s and lower 70s. There is such a funneling of talent to certain programs because the transfer portal now allows you to go. And if it doesn't work out, there's no penalty. You just leave and you can go somewhere else. And it's fine. It's wonderful from that aspect. But one of the unintended consequences is certain programs can hoard talent.
I can't get you past Michigan. Can I get you with an Oklahoma State?
Again, Cam leads a bunch of teams to the playoff, but can he win the national title with him? Not in this day and age. No.
Also, I guess that brings up the great college football playoff BCS era debate as well, where Cam Newton
more parity when there's only two teams, Chip.
Cam Newton on Oklahoma State probably gets them undefeated through the regular season. And if they're undefeated conference champs, then they might be able to wind up there at the end of the year. But who gets left out, Georgia or Bama, after they played in the SEC championship game? Like a BCS era allowed for Cam Newton to drag Auburn to a national championship. If Cam Newton is playing for Auburn and that 2010 team plays in the college football playoff, it is very possible, if not likely, that they might not have won the national championship.
Yeah, like the inverse relationship is when there's two teams, there's less access, but there's more likely to be parity as far as who can win it because it just takes one good year. But with an expanded field, you have more teams that could say, we made the playoff, but it's a whole hell of a lot harder to win a title.
All right. Next question comes from Forrest the Florist. What's up, lads? Loyal listener circa 2017 here. Absolutely love the show and the boost of serotonin I get every time I hear the title song. I've got a mailbag question, but also wondering, where's the camp buzz? It's coming. Camps have been mostly a full week through, so hoping we get some good intel soon. And that is like, this is about the time this weekend we will have a lot of those first big scrimmages, and that will reveal for a lot of our reporters across the 24/7 Sports Network a lot of good intel in terms of how these position battles are sorting out, who's really been creating that kind of camp buzz. Don't worry, loyal Cover 3 listeners, camp buzz is coming. But on that note, Forrest the Florist asks, can you all predict quarterback competition winners? Ole Miss, UNC, LSU, Texas A&M, and surprisingly Texas all have wide open jobs. Would love to see which horse each of you have in those races. Can we start easiest first? Does anybody believe that Quinn Ewers is not going to win the Texas job?
No.
Okay. So we can just sort of cross that one off the list. Thank you, Forrest.
Week one, no matter what. Week one.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, he could lose the job maybe if he plays poorly, but I just
not against ULM.
Yeah, I just don't. But I'm saying as the season goes on, but I just don't see how everything that's gone into getting him to Austin is going to lead to anything but him being the team starting quarterback for that first game.
Yeah. Okay, so let's work backwards. Texas A&M. We talked about this yesterday. Are we any reason to believe that it's not going to be Haynes King?
I have received 15 different versions of the meme I asked for on the show yesterday from Haynes King. So at this point, it better be Haynes King, or else I'm going to feel bad about all the stuff people did for me.
Okay. LSU.
No damn idea what to expect from LSU this year. I mean, have either of you heard anything that kind of suggests they're leaning one way or the other?
And I think even more so by design, planning a week one, like new coach, new scheme. Let's keep the other and there's multiple reasons, but let's keep the other team guessing. there's just no need for them to reveal any lean whatsoever, so that Florida State has no idea what to prepare for.
I'm not. Go ahead.
No, and we talked about it during the win total. It's like, this is Brian Kelly. Even when you know who Brian Kelly's starting quarterback is going to be, you don't know who Brian Kelly's starting quarterback is going to be, because we've seen it when he's got, like the old saying is, when you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. Brian Kelly's like, if you only have one, you don't have any. Like, you need seven. I have no idea. Like, whoever starts that first game, I'm not even going to consider them the starter yet.
Do you think it's automatic we see Jaden Daniels in some capacity against Florida State? I do too. I think they'll have a package for him to run. I think they'll have a package for him, no matter what, if it starts or doesn't start.
So that was my prediction: is Miles Brennan takes the first snap, but we could see 2 to 3. Like Nussmeier might even get in there by the end of the game if for some reason that either Brennan or Daniels start to struggle. But I think it is highly likely that maybe even by halftime, we have seen both Miles Brennan and Jaden Daniels take snaps against Florida State's defense.
And there are some people like close to that program who think Nussmeier might be the best of the three.
It's fascinating.
His dad definitely does.
Yes, obviously.
but Brennan's got the experience, and he's been good when he's healthy. So if he's healthy, then I would expect him to take the first snap there. All right, North Carolina, Jacoby Criswell, Drake May. Who do you think ends up winning that one?
You're the Tar Heel. You tell us.
No, there is. I would be extremely surprised if Mac Brown and Phil Longo decide on a starter before Florida A&M in week 0, because that allows for them to be able to see the competition. And remember when Saban also used to drag this out through like week 3? It was always like the opener. Like famously, like Jalen Hurts didn't even take the first snap against USC, and that game started out a little rocky. Hurts comes in, they end up winning 52-3. I think that with Florida A&M at App State, at Georgia State, it will be both of them play against Florida A&M. There will be plans to play both against App State, and whichever one is able to handle what I expect to be an amazing and a hostile environment at the Rock and Boone is going to end up being the one to pull away. I lean Criswell here. Drake May's a very good runner, and like both of them are big and thick. Like their body type and their playing style are pretty much the same. But with that news of Antoine Green being out for injury for a couple weeks, I mean, it's like Josh Downs or bust in terms of reliable wide receiving options. So this is a North Carolina offense that I think is going to need to be as creative and as run heavy with the quarterback run included for them to be able to have some success. And so slight edge to Criswell, but the Drake May ceiling is obviously extremely high. And I do expect, again, both will play against Florida A&M. I think there will be a plan for both to play against App State in Boone, and it will be a little bit more of who handles the situation better ends up taking the lead there.
I'll go with that. Everything Chip said is what I think too.
Okay.
I'll go with Criswell starts with the veteran, but you're going to see more.
And then Ole Miss.
I think it's going to be Altmaier. I have no intel on that, but just like reading tea leaves of what I like, I did have to watch the Ole Miss spring game because I was on duty that weekend and I had to do like a spring game roundup. I thought Altmaier was better in that game. And a lot of the reports that you just kind of hear from, beats covering the team and little tidbits of information that come out, like, I feel like they're preparing you for Luke Altmaier being the starting quarterback, but that's just the way I read it.
All right. Okay. Let's go to, all right. I'll go ahead and take this live one. Mark from the live chat says, Chip worry factor with UNC. For one, there's no worry. I mean, it is setting up perfectly for a great North Carolina football season. They're going to win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. They're going to lose one to a team that they shouldn't have lost to, and then they're going to jump up and get somebody. I mean, maybe it's Notre Dame, and there are a couple opportunities on the schedule where I think that North Carolina is going to win as an underdog. But in terms of the overall consistency, I don't think we've seen any consistency from this program over the last 2 seasons. And so, yeah, I think it'll end up being 7-5, 8-4. No long winning streaks, no long losing streaks. Just a perfectly entertaining North Carolina football season. Just get you to basketball season, baby. Just win a couple home games and then start the year preseason number 2 in the basketball season.
How can anybody
What does that
worry?
mean?
What do you mean? What does that mean?
What does that mean for the future of Mac Brown? 7-5.
Oh, 7-5 brings some 7-5
forward.
7-5 if it involves real struggles on the defensive side of the football is a poor reflection on Mac Brown's decision to bring in Gene Chizik, because Gene Chizik was brought to Chapel Hill, his old guy, and Gene Chizik's been a defensive coordinator in Chapel Hill and had some success. And the idea was we've done a good job recruiting 4-star talent, even sprinkle in a couple 5-stars in there too. It's time to flip the switch and be able to get that kind of production out of that unit. I think if the defense gets pushed around a little bit again, then you start to get a little unsettled. I think if it's 6-6 for sure, and 7-5 depends on how it breaks down. If there's offensive struggles with the changeover at quarterback and with the absence of good wide receiving threats, it's maybe a little bit more excused. But if it's another year where the defense is a little bit of a liability after having all these good recruiting classes, then 7-5 at least causes some unsettled responses, I think, throughout the Carolina fan base.
Yeah,
I think it kind of puts Mac Brown on the hot seat the following season. And when I say hot seat, it's like warm seat. They'll be keeping a little bit of tension between Mac Brown and some uncomfortable questions. I mean, he's getting up there. I would lean towards 8 wins though, so I feel better about him. I think that some of that talent is going to come. I mean, he's been doing really well in the recruiting trail. That's his specialty, and I think they'll have a better season.
I think I have no idea how Chizik's going to do as the DC there, because it's hard to know when, he's had success doing it before in his career, obviously, but when you've been in a studio for a few years, things change a lot. Just miss one season, the game changes on you. But I do feel like the Bateman was never a fit that made a ton of sense to me, because I thought Bateman's defenses at Army were very good, but he went from Army, which is an option team that has the ball for 40 minutes a game and puts together a whole bunch of 8, 9, 10-minute drives, to a North Carolina team that was playing at tempo and was going moving down the field in 2.5 minutes before putting the defense back out there. It was a weird kind of, I don't know. I think the results kind of show the kind of fit that it was.
If they can get alignment in among that defensive staff and everybody on the same page and everyone getting the same message, then I think that it'll be a good thing for the Tar Heels. So we will see how it does end up playing out. Losing at App State is not a sign that it's going to be an awful season. Like North Carolina losing at App State,
I don't think it's a great sign though.
It's not a great sign. But
it's not.
I'm not going to be throwing up any panic. My panic meter is not going to get tripped by losing in Boone in that game.
I think you got too much Boone in you. I think you're not seeing it clearly enough. It's not disrespect to App State, but if I'm an ACC team, I better not be losing to the Sun Belt team.
They lost to App State at home.
I know. And how did it go from that point? It's not a good sign.
All right. Here we go. Let's do one more. Thanks for all the content this summer. Tom has mentioned playing the bass. Does anyone else play an instrument? Danny, do you play an instrument?
I played the cello up until 8th grade, but I don't think that counts.
No, did you ever mess around and do stand-up bass then?
I know. See, that's when you look back on it, the bass is so much cooler. I don't know why. I don't know why I was steered in the direction of cello. I have no idea. There was probably a good-looking girl that was close in the violin section is probably why I did it, but I have no idea why that decision was made.
Yo Canel over here, just playing out on the cello.
Tom, do you play anything else other than bass?
I play guitar poorly, and I could play the drums, and I could play the recorder. I had to learn how to play that in 3rd grade. So
I never got drums. I can play guitar, I can play piano, and then you can play bass. If you've got a basic idea, if you've played when I was in my most not successful, but the most talented bands that I ever played in, I always played bass because I wasn't as good at guitar as the other guitarists that were in the band, but I still knew how to keep time and be able to play and contribute.
Yeah, a bad guitar player can play a perfectly fine bass.
Yeah,
that was a much simplified version.
Exactly. Here was the next part of the question. Week 0 is fast approaching, and that means everyone is fired up for Vandy versus Hawaii, Nebraska, Northwestern, and of course, Illinois and Wyoming. what are some of your favorite week 0 games from the past?
The long illustrious era of week 0. What's it been, like 5-6 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 2016 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And like
and 2020 didn't really have a week 0. It just kind of everything started.
Right. So what do we think?
I mean, obviously my favorite was last year, Illinois beating Nebraska in week 0, announcing to the world that they were back. And Nebraska was going to stink.
Is that, Danny, that's why you thought this was a Tom planted question.
Yes, I think it's pretty easy. I think that because I'm trying to think, like, has there been any just barn burner great games?
There really haven't. The only other one I could think of.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I think
y'all are
Florida Miami game was good.
Florida, Miami, and Arizona, Hawaii. It was 2019.
Oh, yeah.
2 games, and they were both awesome. Florida 24, Miami 20. And that was, a preseason top 10 Florida. Then Arizona losing at Hawaii 45, Arizona 38. Cole McDonald throwing for 378 yards. Khalil Tate rushing for 100. That was just, nothing but bangers on that 2019 week 0. We weren't trotting out a lot of FCS matchups. This was Miami and Florida, Arizona and Hawaii. Both games decided by 1 score. I thought that one was a very, very solid, week 0 from the history.
I completely
forgot about how fast this thing has grown. I think it's going to get even bigger too. I mean, the TV networks looking for all this inventory. They see opportunity. I think we're going to see this grow.
Also, like, Illinois is playing in week 0 again, and the reason they're doing it, like Brett Bielema says, he enjoys getting the second bye because if you play that week 0 game, you get another bye to your schedule. And he also says, like, he's of the opinion that, your team improves the most from week 1 to week 2. So he loves to get that week 0 game out of the way against Wyoming before you play like a Big Ten game. Because we're seeing now there are far more like week 1 conference games.
Yeah. The old week 0 was like, get yourself fired up for Hawaii at Colorado State, Wyoming at New Mexico State. Mm-hmm. And now it's starting to obviously trickle out just a little bit. Coming up on the other side, we got a special guest for you on the audio side, and then we'll dive back into the big old bag of mail with a look at Josh Heupel's long-term ceiling at Tennessee and more next.
Whoa, your dad's a superhero.
No, my dad can't handle hot wings.
Check this out. Step into the spotlight. Playtime's over, kids.
Prepare for war.
Hold it! These things are warm.
You got the winter suit. Rated PG.
If you're on the audio side, thank you very much to Travion Williams for jumping in on the show. If you're watching us live on YouTube, head over to our YouTube page, youtube.com/cover3. The interview is already posted. All right, let's dive back into the big old bag of mail with a question straight from the heart of producer Jordan. Here we go. But this is actually from Jake. Dear Cover 3 Pod.
Jordan's question, man.
Dear Cover 3 Pod, last year Tom Fornelli referred to me as a poor bastard for being both a Tottenham and a Tennessee Vols fan. Well, as Michael Scott would say, oh, how the turned tables have turned. Tottenham is flying high with Antonio Conte, and Tennessee may have found our savior in Josh Heupel. My question is, what is Heupel's long-term ceiling at Tennessee? Are we destined to be a typical air raid team where the ceiling is 10 wins and a New Year's Six bowl? Or can Heupel lead the Vols to an SEC and potentially national championship?
You poor deluded bastard.
Now it's not even poor bastard, it's poor deluded.
Listen, Antonio Conte is my favorite manager in the world, so Tottenham's going to be fine. You're going to enjoy that. It's going to be really good. Buckle up. You're going to have fun. Jordan with the PSA. Fouls are back. I think, honestly, it's hard to say because with the NIL, like obviously Tennessee's gotten off to a pretty decent start in the recruiting class this year. If they're able to maintain that, then I think that they're going to improve. But I think that honestly, and Bud has mentioned this, like Josh Heupel was hired kind of as a bridge in a way, and it's like he's going to be entertaining. You might not have the best team kind of competing for the East, but coming off of where Tennessee has been and just getting some sort of stability, at least it will placate fans in that it's going to be fun. And let's look at how it's played out. Tennessee went 7-6 last year, but scored a bunch of points, and fans now think that they're going to be competing for the SEC and playoff berths because they went 7-6 and outscored their opponents by, I think, 1 point on the year. So I think that under Josh Heupel, you're probably an 8-4, 9-3 kind of ceiling. I don't think you're going to be better than Georgia anytime soon. And I think if Florida gets its act together, I mean, 9-3 is where I think you're probably going to be, best case scenario.
I would say higher. More bullish on what they could be. I mean, we get this question a lot from fans of programs that have never really had runs like Tennessee did 20 years ago. And I know it's 20 years ago, but I think there's the desires there such a way. I mean, it's almost a problem because the fan base gets in their own way hiring and firing coaches, but financially got one of the stronger collectives. We've seen that pay off. They want to do what it takes to compete against the likes of Florida and Georgia in the East. I do feel like the offense is good enough where if their defense can start coming along and eventually get better, they get somebody special at quarterback, I think you'll start seeing them show up in that blue chip ratio that Bud always talks about where the talent will be there. I don't think they'll be a dynasty. I don't think they're going to knock off Georgia anytime soon, but I think if things fall their way, I think they'd be 11-1, 10-2, and competing for an SEC championship. I think they could knock off Georgia at home in that environment. If Georgia doesn't evolve offensively, it's a massive opportunity for Tennessee. But
so go ahead.
I think Georgia can evolve offensively.
So my example that I go to is a story from the recent college football history when the collectives, before there were collectives, when we've seen a program be able to take all of the want to and suddenly see things jump. And I'm looking at the Hugh Freeze era at Ole Miss. And what was the ceiling of that Ole Miss team? It was playing in what are now, New Year's Six bowl games. It was even beating Alabama head to head. But you know what it wasn't doing? Winning an SEC championship, because as much want to as there is, as much offensive firepower as they were able to create, they just didn't have the consistency to not only win that one big game, but also to be able to get a stop on like 4th and whatever when Arkansas was able to steal away the opportunity to win the SEC West. We're talking about just the Josh Heupel era at Tennessee. That's what I see as the ceiling. That's what I see as, where you can realistically believe things can get to, and maybe even quickly, maybe even with Nico, maybe even in one of these next 3 seasons, that with an infusion of talent, you can get to the point where you're going to win that game against Georgia. But the problem is the loss against Alabama, if it comes, is going to count for your SEC schedule the same way as everything else. So you're going to be sitting there sweating tiebreakers, just like Ole Miss was, back in the day. And so I think that it is possible that we are seeing Tennessee in the Sugar Bowl when it's not part of the college football playoff as a 10-2 team, or that Tennessee starts the month of November needing a little help, but being in the SEC championship race. I definitely think that the history of tradition, and what an infusion of real talent can really bring to the Vols allows that to be the ceiling. But Georgia and Alabama have just had this thing sustained. Kirby Smart, as we mentioned, had to bump his head against the ceiling. He had to continue to stack class after class after class after class. And that consistency that he's had over the last 5 years is what set Georgia up to be able to be a national championship contender almost every single season. So I don't know if Josh Heupel's there for 10 years, but I think Josh Heupel could be there for the next 4 or 5. And in that 4 or 5 window, I could see Josh Heupel leading Tennessee to a double-digit win season in a New Year's Six bowl game.
A couple other factors we need to consider, though, too. One brought up by Cameron Lopez in the chat, so thank you for that. But first, we have to consider what the future of the SEC is going to be. Because let's remember, right now, Tennessee is competing in the East, and its primary competition is Georgia. Well, Oklahoma and Texas are joining the conference soon. So there's 2 more programs that are going to be considering themselves teams prepared to be competing for SEC titles. What will the alignment of the conference be once that happens? Do Auburn and Alabama move to the East as Oklahoma and Texas are added to the West? Do they just get rid of divisions altogether? Does Tennessee have to keep its protected rivalries? Because like we've mentioned, Georgia, what Kirby's done there, been able to stack recruiting class on recruiting class. But what Georgia doesn't have to do every year is play Alabama in the regular season. Tennessee does. It's one of their protected rivalries. So you've got that to consider. You have realignment to consider with Texas and Oklahoma coming in. There's just, I don't know, once those new schools come in, you add that to the pool that already has A&M, LSU, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. Like, where's Tennessee going to fall realistically in that pecking order? I don't think this is, like, I'm not saying they can't have a 10-win season or an 11-win season, a special year, everything goes wonderful. But I think that if you're looking for consistent finishes, the best you're looking at for consistently is going to be 9-3. That's just what I think it's realistic.
So I'll go back and kind of readjust my answer, because I do think 9-3, but I think the changes of college football are going to benefit a program like Tennessee, because if we see playoff expansion, not just 1 or 2 teams from the SEC, possibly 3 and even 4, I think that's a huge benefit for Tennessee. And I think that would be where all of a sudden maybe they can come in and make some waves and win an SEC title, or lose the SEC, not get the SEC title, but get to the playoff. So I would say the record, I would probably agree with you closer on that one.
Oh my gosh, Jake in Knoxville, you're going to be so happy, because what we're telling you is that the ceiling is a Tottenham ceiling. You can finish top 4, make Champions League, get into the playoff. That's about the ceiling, but you ain't getting ahead of Man City and Liverpool. You're just rooting to finish in the 3rd or 4th spot.
Well, now, if Antonio Conte was managing Tennessee, I would say maybe they could win the division in the SEC. Because nothing against Josh Heupel, but as far as where my power rankings are from different sports of managers, Antonio Conte here, Josh Heupel here.
And speaking of football, don't forget that Serie A gets started. Every Serie A match can be streamed on Paramount Plus. It does get started this weekend on Paramount Plus. Be sure to check it out.
Look at that cross promotion machine over there, Chip Patterson.
It's top of mind, as Nikola Milinkovic has signed up for another 4 seasons with Fiorentina, I will admit. All right, this next question comes from Ken. And listen, it's going to be a little lengthy, but I'm just going to go ahead and spoil. The reason that this jumped out at me is he is actually a UMass season ticket holder. So apply all the kinds of grace that he deserves as a UMass season ticket holder. Hey, fellas, appreciate all you do. Your content gets me through each and every week. I'm from the Northeast, more specifically Massachusetts. Even more specifically, I'm actually a UMass season ticket holder. Believe it or not, we do exist. Well, there's a couple dozen of us anyway. I know what you're thinking. This guy is a glutton for punishment. After all, UMass hasn't exactly lit it up since moving to D1. In fact, the team is a combined 20-92 in that stretch, winning just about 1 game for every 5 losses. As I look back fondly on the 4-win Mark Whipple years, it leads me to take a look around at other programs in the Northeast and their lack of relative success. Dino Babers had his 10-win season in 2018, and Matty Ice managed to get BC ranked 2nd nationally, but that was all the way back in 2007. Beyond those couple of seasons, there just isn't that much success to talk about around these parts, unfortunately, which leads to my question. If you were leading a program in the Northeast with the goal of eventually becoming a nationally relevant program, what steps would you take to get there? Are there still levers for programs up here to pull, or do us fans in the Northeast just need to admit we'll never compete with our counterparts elsewhere in the country? My buddies and I agreed we'd go to every UMass bowl game they managed to make when they joined D1 back in 2012. It'd be nice to get one before I'm gone.
What was his name?
Ken.
Ken, bless you, because you.
So what area of the country? He said Northeast.
Massachusetts.
He's a UMass season ticket holder.
Oh boy.
I mean, like, he is a hero, is what he is, because it's easy to be a fan of an SEC team or an ACC team or a Big Ten team, even the bad ones. But to be a UMass fan and a season ticket holder, those are the people that keep this sport going. So bless you. As for the question, Danny, Chip, any ideas?
He said national relevance. All right, so he's looking for just relevance.
I mean, and honestly, it sounds like near the end, he just wants a bowl game before he dies. So I don't know.
How old is he?
Yeah, I don't know how old Ken is.
Have you been to a doctor lately? What is it? Have they given you any like cholesterol readings? What do we need to know?
I would be throwing stuff at the wall. I'd go out and hire who's the guy that goes for it on fourth down every down.
Yeah, you need to be different.
Yeah, you gotta have something. Get a coach with some personality that's gonna say things. That's gonna say we'll play anybody anywhere. We don't care if we get beat by whatever. You need that money from those games to come in. I was gonna say you go into the Southeast with your shirt off and play 7-on-7 with the players like Jim Harbaugh did, or you have satellite camps down there. I mean, you do clearly, but my mind was. Because I think it was one of the guys, I think it was David Hale at ESPN wrote an article about the Northeast schools. And so that's where my mind went to. I wasn't going to UMass of how do you make them relevant. But I think you got to do something outside the box. You got to run a system. You got to hire a coach, somebody who's different, who's going to make you stand out.
I'll go to my
and then
old
if you
standby.
do, he's probably going to leave if he has success. So.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll go to my standby. You got to run the option. I mean, first, you'll get attention just for being an option team, because they're rare. You don't see a ton of them. But like I said, you have to be different. You can't be trying. If you're a program like at BC, you don't have to run the option. Maybe you should, but you don't have to. Like, you could have relevance there. Like if you're in a Power 5 program, but if you're UMass and you're like an independent, you can't be trying to do everything everybody else does, thinking that you are going to be able to beat them at it when you're in an area that does not have the kind of depth of football talent that the rest of the country has, and you just don't have the kind of history to convince kids to come to your school. Like the fields you're recruiting in, the pool you're recruiting in, you've got to kind of, mold yourself to that. And I think running the option would be something that you could do. Because I mean, if that's why it works for the service academies, because they have size requirements that they have to meet that you can't be, you can't be in a submarine if you're 6'7", 320 pounds. So you can't be in the Navy. So they have to go to what they can get. And I think that's what I would do first and foremost if I was at a program like UMass. But the other problem that you have there is if you're an independent and you've got to put together a full schedule every year, you're going to find enough teams that want to schedule you if you're running the option. So I don't know. It's a really tough conundrum.
Celebrity coach. I'm talking, and look,
Bill Belichick leaves the Patriots to take over UMass.
Could be a YouTube star, could be a movie star. Like I do not care about credentials, because the first place I went was
Affleck.
yes, like the first place I went was like, okay, we need to secure the bag or get together. Like what are the levers that can be pulled? I said, no, just being able to offer, an incredibly, financially beneficial experience might not even need to be enough. We need to make the program attractive. And I was just thinking all right, well, if you're up in the Northeast, then maybe you just need a star. Like we do not need any football acumen as much as we need to change the face of this program. And that's why I say celebrity coach. And maybe even like a fail up, son of a billionaire or something. I mean, let's really go to somebody who is going to go from the tabloids to the front page of CBS Sports just with their arrival. I mean, the sensible side of this is you hire the former, NFL star, right? Mm-hmm. And that former NFL star gets an opportunity to be a coach. But I think that the uphill battle is so steep that we just might need to go straight to actor / movie star / personality of fame in order to really generate the kind of spark and interest that Wahlberg. Here we go. Let's let Wahlberg. Johnson.
Yeah, but he would insist on playing quarterback, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, let's go. Defense. Yeah, Dawson in the chat says defense is named DeWall. Look, I don't know how Wahlburgers is doing right now. I know that they found themselves in some trouble, but I still think that the leadership is there. Mark Wahlberg is definitely in the realm of what I'm talking about here. Ben Affleck is in the realm of what I'm talking about here. Let's bring in some real attention to the program that might not exist otherwise. So that's kind of where I ended up leaning. And Ken, I hope you get a bowl game, but I don't know. All right. One more question. Oh, this might be a better question for when we have some time to prep. But Preston, who already delivered the goods with the meme on demand, is asking in the chat, what are the preseason, cause it would be funny, games of the year? I
Well,
mean, I've got the
your
Texas
Texas
A&M
one
South
is,
Carolina. UTSA Texas is another one that I've already got circled, because no matter what happens against Alabama, the expectation is going to be that Texas is going to turn around and either keep the momentum going or right the wrongs of whatever happened against the Crimson Tide. Jeff Traylor is going to bring a Roadrunners team that, while there will be a step back, is not going to be an easy out. So Texas UTSA, Texas A&M South Carolina. Are there any other ones? And we can maybe circle back to this one as well as a segment once we've got some time to prep. But I do like the idea. What do you think?
Bobby Petrino going back to Arkansas. I mean,
oh my gosh,
that would not get any funnier than that.
That's a great call.
Amazing. Yes. Virginia Tech losing to ODU again from the Blue Chicken. Boy, that would be a gift for Ricky Ronnie and the Monarchs. Tom, you got any?
I was gonna say North Carolina losing to both App State and Georgia State, scheduling back-to-back road Sun Belt games. That'll teach you. Kind of along the same lines as what you're doing with Texas, like Miami going to College Station, beating the Aggies, and then coming home and losing to Middle Tennessee.
Yep. That's the key of it would be funny is a lot of times in the back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the give and the take, the
shift in narrative.
Yeah, the narrative shift is a huge part of it.
Wouldn't it be funny if somehow USC and Oklahoma played in a bowl game? I mean, I don't even care.
Oh,
just give me the matchup.
Yeah.
Like everybody talks about the NCAA tournament rigging matchups for narrative purposes.
Oh
like
my gosh.
If you're a bowl, especially if they've both fallen short of expectations.
Mm-hmm. If they're both like 7-5 or 8-4, put them in like the Holiday Bowl or something. Yeah.
I mean, that's like the Florida UCF bowl game last year.
Yeah.
It was like,
yeah,
I'll tell you what we've got in the Gasparilla Bowl. Someone that's gonna be mad. Someone that's gonna be really angry.
It's not the Cheez-It Bowl anymore, but isn't like what was the Cheez-It Bowl like a Pac-12 Big 12 matchup between kind of like second, third? Yeah. So what if that's what happens? Like they both go 8-4, 7-5, and then we get whatever the bowl game that's played at the Arizona Diamondback Stadium is called now. We get them playing in that game.
Amazing.
Great.
Kansas beating Texas again would be phenomenal. I mean, I'm so sorry, Texas fans.
No,
so many of these, wouldn't it be hilarious involve the Longhorns?
I actually disagree with that. I think Kansas beating Texas again goes from being funny to just kind of being sad.
Okay. And still some the Alamo Bowl. Yeah, because USC and Oklahoma wouldn't be happy to be in the Alamo Bowl. I know the Alamo Bowl is a fun bowl game, but that would definitely bring out the goods right there. Also, Gronk is a great suggestion to be the UMass head coach and sort of fulfill both the celebrity angle, but also the former NFL star. All right, let's get one more and then we get out of here. Hey guys, great podcast. Y'all helped me through a long distance relationship with lots of content for long drives. My mailbag question is this: what are some of the key numbers college football bettors should be aware of during the season? There are obvious ones like -2.5 to -3.5 and -6.5 and -7.5. But I also remember Bud and Tom mentioning some more college football specific ones like common totals that you want to be on the right side of. Thanks in advance for me and my girlfriend, since her future engagement ring will be substantially larger from following y'all's picks this year.
I mean, I should have been better prepared for this because I don't have it right in front of me, but it's pretty common sense. Like key numbers are, if you think about
7s and 3s and like multiply them up, like it's 45, 45, 49, 52 are definitely ones that are going to pop up a lot. In the Big Ten, your 45 -3.5 is kind of like your standard that you're just going to slap on any mid-tier Big Ten team. You start to get up into the more higher scoring, wide open offenses. That's where you're going to have 52 and 55. Just start combining your 7 and 3s, and you can start to put together a good set of key numbers. And most of them are going to be between 45 and 56.
Yeah, because like it's But you said 3, 7, add them up, but also like look at final scores. Like there's a lot of 4-point games. There's a lot of 7-point games, 10-point games. It's those are the numbers you want to kind of look at as far as the final scores. So that way it's the differences in a key number, like the questioner said. When it comes to betting 2.5 to 3.5, that's a huge difference as far as like what side you want to be on, because the game is expected to be close, and a lot of close games are settled by 3 points or less. So depending on which side you're on, 2.5, 3.5, 3, those are key numbers. Whereas going from a 5 to a 6, like I would put a lot more thought in a line moving from 3 to 3.5 might completely take me off the game, because that half point in that area is going to be huge. But a line moving a full point from 5 to 6 won't have as much of an impact on me, because you don't see a lot of 5-point games compared to 6-point games. So it's stuff like that to consider, really.
Do you have any key numbers that you pay attention of, Danny? Does the shifts end up like drawing you one way or the other, or you more gut?
77. When you see that number, there's a principle that we have on the cover 3 that you just can't take it anymore. I mean, we have our principal key numbers that we have to pay attention to. That's what I'm worried about. No, you guys nailed all the ones.
Yeah. Hey, next week we have something very special in store for you, because on Wednesday we've been doing our win totals. We've made it through almost everyone. On Monday, we'll tackle some of the news. We'll give you some camp buzz, and then also there was a mailbag question asking for BYU win total thoughts. So we'll do BYU, we'll do Notre Dame, do an open table, not a whole episode, but at least be sure that we give a spotlight to some of the notable teams that are outside of the Power 5. We've finished all the Power 5 conferences. Make sure you go back and listen to them. That'll be on Monday. Then on Wednesday, we will be doing our win totals locks. So if you want to actually know, of all the picks that we've given, and we've given, I think, 65 of them so far, which ones are we the most confident in? Which ones are we putting down on the spreadsheet for our competition? That will be on Wednesday. So make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Pernell. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.